The wagon came apart like kindling. Tom Garrett felt the axle snap before he heard it, a shudder that ran through the reins and into his cracked hands. The overloaded bed tilted hard to the left, and 100 pounds of flour sacks avalanched into Silver Bend's frozen Main Street. December wind cut through his wool coat. He smelled wood smoke from the storefronts, heard harness bells go silent as men stopped to watch. 20 faces, not one moved to help. Vernon Calhoun leaned against the bank window, arms crossed, mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. Tom's boot slipped in the mud as he tried to brace the wagon. His shoulders screamed, the crowd shifted, uncomfortable, fascinated. Then he heard it. A child's cry, weak as a sparrow coming from beneath the cargo. Tom's head snapped toward the sound. Through the jumble of broken wood and canvas, he saw a small, pale hand, fingers twitching. The hand went limp. Tom roared for help. His voice echoed off the false front buildings and died in the wind. No one moved. He grabbed the wagon's edge, felt something tear in his shoulder as he heaved. The bed lifted an inch, then two. Flour dust billowed into his face, chalky and bitter on his tongue. His boots slid in the frozen ruts. "For God's sake," he gasped. "There's a child." Vernon turned away, said something to his clerk. The two of them walked into the bank. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a gun hammer. Tom braced his back against the wagon bed and pushed with his legs. The old carpenter's trick his father taught him, leverage, not strength. The wood groaned. His vision went white at the edges. Then the weight shifted. The wagon tilted back onto three wheels. He dropped to his knees in the mud and pulled cargo aside with bleeding hands. Sacks of flour, coils of rope, a crate of mason jars. Beneath it all, curled in a space no bigger than a dog's bed, lay a little girl. Her lips were blue. Ice crystals clung to her dark hair. She wore a threadbare coat 2 sizes too small, and her small chest barely moved. Tom lifted her as gently as his shaking hands allowed. She weighed nothing. Her head lolled against his shoulder, and he felt the faint flutter of her heartbeat through his coat. "Doc Henderson," he called out. His throat was raw. "Someone get Doc Henderson." The crowd began to break apart. Men found reasons to be elsewhere. Horses to tend, stores to open, business that couldn't wait. Within a minute, the street was empty except for Tom kneeling in the mud, holding a child who might already be dead. Her hand twitched. Something silver fell from her neck and landed in the frozen mud beside his boot. A locket, tarnished, old, hanging from a broken chain. Tom picked it up with numb fingers. The clasp was loose. Inside, folded impossibly small, was a piece of paper covered in faded ink. Numbers, lines, coordinates he couldn't read. The girl's eyes opened, brown, unfocused, filled with the kind of fear that shouldn't exist in a child. "Mama," she whispered. Then her eyes closed again. Tom stood, the girl in his arms, the locket clutched in his fist. Doc Henderson's office was 3 blocks away. His ruined wagon could wait. The child couldn't. Doc Henderson's office smelled of carbolic and old coffee. Tom kicked the door open with his boot, and the doctor looked up from his desk, spectacles sliding down his nose. Sweet Jesus. Henderson cleared the examination table with one sweep of his arm. Papers scattered. "Put her here." Tom laid the girl down as carefully as glass. Her skin had the waxy look of deep cold. Henderson pressed 2 fingers to her throat, counting under his breath. "She was under your wagon?" The doctor's hands moved quickly, checking pupils, listening to her chest with his stethoscope. "Don't know how she got there." Tom stepped back, giving him room. His shoulder throbbed where he'd torn something. "Heard her cry. Nobody else did. Or nobody else wanted to." Henderson peeled back the girl's eyelids, one at a time. "Pulse is weak but steady. Hypothermia, maybe cracked ribs. How long was she out there?" "Can't say. I only just—" The door opened behind them. Esther Whitfield stood in the frame, her gray hair escaping its bun, flour dusting her apron. She must have run from the boarding house. "Lord have mercy." She moved to the table, her weathered hands already reaching for the blankets stacked on Henderson's shelf. "Is that little Lily Dawson?" Tom looked at her. "You know her?" Orphan train dropped her at St. Mary's 3 months back. Esther wrapped the girl, Lily, in wool blankets, tucking them tight. Her mother died of fever on the way west. Poor mite's been doing odd jobs around town, sleeping wherever Sister Agnes can find space. Henderson worked in silence, cleaning a shallow cut on Lily's forehead. "She'll live if we warm her up slow. Too fast and we shock the heart." Tom's hand was still closed around the locket. He looked down at it, the tarnished silver catching lamplight. "She had this. Fell when I lifted her." Esther glanced at it, then at him. "Best you keep it safe till she wakes. Child's got nothing else in this world." Lily stirred. Her lips moved, forming words too soft to hear. Tom leaned closer. Mama hid the map, she whispered. Her eyes didn't open. Said it would keep me safe, but I don't know how. Henderson met Tom's gaze over the girl's small form. She's delirious, fever talking. But Tom's thumb was already tracing the locket's edge, feeling the shape of folded paper inside. Doc, he said quietly. She stays at my place tonight. Orphanage is full and freezing. Henderson nodded once. Take her at sundown. And Tom, don't let her catch another chill. Next time we won't be so lucky. Tom pocketed the locket. His fingers were numb from more than cold. Dawn came cold and clear. Tom woke to the sound of the stove crackling and realized he'd fallen asleep in the chair beside the spare bed. His neck ached. The room smelled of wood smoke and the faint medicinal tang of the salve Henderson had sent. Lily was awake, sitting up against the pillows, watching him with those wide brown eyes. Morning, Tom said. His voice came out rough. He cleared his throat and stood, joints popping. You hungry? She nodded, just barely. He moved to the stove and stirred the pot of oatmeal he'd started before sitting down. His hands remembered the rhythm. His wife Martha used to make it this way, with a pinch of salt and a spoonful of molasses if they had it. He'd made it for their daughter, too, in those brief hours before she stopped breathing. His hands remembered. What's your name? Lily's voice was small but steady. Tom Garrett. This is my ranch. Well, he stopped himself. No point burdening a child with the truth of what he owed. You're safe here. Thank you for pulling me out. She tucked her knees up under the quilt. I was hiding, didn't mean to fall asleep under there. Tom brought her a bowl, steam rising from the oatmeal. She took it with both hands, careful, like someone who'd learned not to spill. Hiding from what? She ate 3 spoonfuls before answering. There's a man. He came to St. Mary's asking about me. Sister Agnes said he was family, but Mama never talked about any family. Her fingers touched her throat, searching. My locket. Safe. Tom pulled it from his vest pocket and held it out. Chain's broken, but the rest is fine. Lily took it like it was made of light. She opened the clasp, unfolded the paper inside, and spread it on the quilt. Tom leaned closer. It was a hand-drawn map, crude, faded, but detailed. A creek, a grove of trees, coordinates written in careful script along the margins, numbers that meant nothing to him. Mama drew this, Lily said, night before she got sick. She said this would keep me safe, that it showed something important. She looked up at him. But I was only 6. I didn't understand. Tom studied the map. The creek looked familiar. Could be Boundary Creek, the one that marked the eastern edge of his property. But the trees were drawn in a place he didn't recognize. Why didn't anyone help you yesterday? Lily asked suddenly. In town. I heard you call for them. Tom's jaw tightened. He sat down on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle her. People in Silver Bend think I'm finished, he said. 3 years of drought, lost most of my herd, had to borrow money just to buy seed last spring. He looked at his hands, the cracks and the calluses. When a man's down, folks tend to step back, in case it's catching. That's mean. That's how it is. Lily folded the map and tucked it back into the locket. She closed it with a soft click, then looked at him again. Mama said this would keep me safe, but I don't know how a map keeps anyone safe. Tom didn't have an answer for that, but something in his chest shifted as he watched her hold that locket like it was the last solid thing in the world. We'll figure it out, he heard himself say. Vernon Calhoun's office smelled of leather and bay rum cologne. Tom stood in front of the desk, hat in hand, while Vernon sorted through papers with the satisfied air of a man who held all the cards. I appreciate you coming in, Tom. Vernon didn't look up. His clerk stood by the window, nervous, not meeting Tom's eyes. Saves me the trouble of riding out to your place. You sent word it was urgent. It is. Vernon slid a document across the desk. Heavy parchment, Tom's signature bold at the bottom. You remember signing this? The loan, last spring. Tom's mouth went dry. Payment's not due till March. Read the clause at the bottom. Tom picked up the paper. The words swam. He'd never been good with reading, especially the small print. He'd trusted the banker who'd drawn it up, trusted that a handshake and a signature meant what they used to mean. Vernon's finger tapped a paragraph Tom had never noticed. In the event of material change in collateral value or borrower default on any other obligation, lender may call full amount due within 60 days. The room tilted. I haven't defaulted on anything? No, but the drought reduced your collateral value. Your herd's half what it was. The ranch isn't worth what it was when we made this deal. Vernon leaned back in his chair. So I'm calling it. $2,800, Tom. Due March 1st. $2,800. Tom's entire year's earnings, back when he had earnings. That's 8 weeks. 63 days, to be precise. Vernon's smile was thin. I'm sure you'll find a way. Sell the herd, maybe. Though, beef prices are low this winter. Tom's hands curled into fists. You're doing this because of yesterday, because I took that girl. I'm doing this because it's business. Vernon stacked the papers neatly, tapped them square. Speaking of the girl, I understand you're housing young Lily Dawson. The shift made Tom's skin prickle. She needed a warm bed. Orphanage was full. Noble of you. Expensive, though, feeding an extra mouth when you're in your position. Vernon's eyes were cold and calculating. I've been looking into her situation. Turns out she and I are related. Distant cousins on her mother's side. I'm filing for guardianship. You're what? A child needs stability, a proper home, not charity from a bankrupt rancher. Vernon stood, straightened his cuffs. I'm her family, Tom. The law will see it my way. Tom's throat closed. She doesn't even know you. She will. Vernon walked to the door, opened it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other business to attend to, and you have 63 days to find $2,800. The clerk wouldn't meet Tom's eyes as he left. Outside, the cold bit through his coat. Tom's hands shook as he untied his horse's reins. Vernon wanted the girl. But why? Esther Whitfield's kitchen smelled of fresh bread and coffee strong enough to strip paint. Tom sat at the scarred wooden table while she worked, her hands never still, kneading dough, checking the oven, pouring coffee into chipped mugs. 3 other women sat around the table, their voices low, the kind of talk that happened when men weren't listening. Vernon Calhoun foreclosed on the Hendricks place last year, said Mary Patterson, who ran the general store with her husband. Bought the note cheap from the original lender, then called it in winter when they couldn't pay. Did the same to the Morrison Ranch, another woman added, in the old Brennan homestead down by Boundary Creek. Tom's head came up. Brennan? Esther set a plate of bread in front of him. Lily's mother was Mary Brennan before she married Dawson. Family had land near the creek, back before the railroad came through and everything got resurveyed. What happened to it? Sold for taxes, or so the story goes. Mary left town young, came back years later married with a baby, then left again after her husband died. Esther's hands stilled on the dough. Always wondered why she ran so hard. Tom broke off a piece of bread. It was warm, soft, and tasted like safety. Vernon said they're cousins, that he's got a claim to guardianship. Mary snorted. Vernon Calhoun's got claims to half the territory if you believe his paperwork. Man collects kinship like some folks collect stamps. There's something else. Esther wiped her hands on her apron and sat down across from Tom. Jake Rothman stopped by yesterday. You know him? Jewish fellow, runs the records at the bank. Tom nodded. He'd seen Rothman around town. Quiet man, kept to himself, got looks from some of the church crowd. He mentioned your loan seemed odd, said the note was purchased at discount from your original lender. Esther's voice dropped. Tom, Vernon paid $1,200 for a note worth $28. He's squeezing you for more than double what he paid. The bread turned to ash in Tom's mouth. That legal? Legal as sin usually is. Esther reached across and gripped his hand. Her palm was warm from the dough, flour dusting her fingers. But Jake said he'd look into it, quiet-like. He knows what it's like to be unwelcome in a place. Tom heard footsteps on the boarding house stairs above them, other tenants moving around, life continuing like the world wasn't tilting under his feet. Why does Vernon want the girl? He asked. The women exchanged glances. Esther spoke carefully. Her mother had that land. If Lily's the heir, and if Vernon's her guardian, he controls what she owns. Until she's of age, which gives him 16, 17 years to do whatever he wants with it. Tom stood, his chair scraping loud against the floorboards. Through the window, he could see the main street, the bank where Vernon kept his office, the land office next door, the saloon where men made deals over whiskey. Thank you, he said, for the bread and the rest. Esther walked him to the door. Tom, that little girl asked about you yesterday. Wanted to know if you were coming back for her. His throat tightened. She say anything else? Said her mama told her to trust people who helped without asking for payment. Esther's eyes were kind but sad. Don't let Vernon turn you into what he is. That girl needs you whole. Jake Rothman's office was above the bank, accessed by a narrow staircase that smelled of old wood and ink. Tom knocked, heard a chair scrape, then the door opened. Rothman was younger than Tom expected, maybe 40, with dark eyes and careful hands. A small mezuzah hung on the doorframe. The room was lined with ledgers, stacked neat as soldiers. Mr. Garrett? Rothman stepped aside. I wondered if you'd come. Esther said you found something. I did. Rothman gestured to the desk, where 2 ledgers lay open side by side. Sit. This will take a minute. Tom sat. The chair creaked under his weight. Outside, he heard the rumble of a freight wagon, the shout of teamsters. Rothman pointed to the first ledger. This is the bank's official record. Your loan originated April 1882 with Cattleman's Trust in Helena. Face value $2,800 at 6% interest. Tom nodded. That matched what he remembered. This, Rothman opened the second ledger, his finger tracing a line of numbers, is my duplicate register. Every transaction that passes through this bank I record separately. Call it a habit from the old country. His smile was brief and joyless. When your people have had their property stolen by men with official stamps, you learn to keep your own books. He turned the ledger so Tom could see. The ink was precise, dated 6 months ago. Vernon purchased your note from Cattleman's Trust for $1,200. Not 28, 12. Tom stared at the numbers. Why would they sell it for less than half? Because Vernon convinced them you'd default. Told them the drought had ruined you, that they'd be lucky to recover anything. They cut their losses. Rothman's jaw tightened. Then Vernon added that clause about material change in collateral value. It wasn't in your original contract. He forged the addendum after he bought the note. The room went quiet, except for the tick of a clock on the wall. That's fraud, Tom said. It is, but proving it means going against Vernon Calhoun in a court where he holds mortgages on half the jury's homes. Rothman closed the ledger carefully. I'm telling you this because Esther asked me to, and because I know what it's like to watch powerful men use paper to steal what they can't take by force. Tom looked at the mezuzah on the doorframe, then back at Rothman. Why help me? We don't even know each other. You pulled a child from under a wagon while the whole town watched and did nothing. Rothman met his eyes. That tells me enough. Outside, a church bell rang. Tom counted the tolls. 4 o'clock. In 2 months, Vernon would own everything he had, unless they found a way to fight back. Give me 2 weeks, Rothman said. I'll trace the paperwork back to Helena. But Tom, why does Vernon care about that little girl? Tom thought of the locket, the map, Lily's whispered words. I don't know yet, he said, but I'm going to find out. The church steps were crowded for a Sunday in January. Tom counted at least 30 people, their breath clouding in the cold air. Word had spread fast. Vernon Calhoun was making an announcement after services. Tom stood at the back of the crowd, Lily beside him in a borrowed coat that still hung too large. Esther had one hand on the girl's shoulder. Jake Rothman stood apart near the corner of the building, watching. Vernon climbed to the top step, flanked by his clerk and a lawyer Tom didn't recognize. Expensive suit, Helena plates on his buggy. Sheriff Hayes leaned against the church doorframe, thumbs hooked in his belt. Good people of Silver Bend, Vernon began, his voice carried easy, practiced. I come before you today regarding a matter of Christian duty and family obligation. Tom's gut tightened. Many of you know that our community received a young orphan girl last autumn, Lily Mae Dawson, daughter of the late Mary Brennan Dawson. Vernon's gaze swept the crowd, landed on Lily for a moment, then moved on. What you may not know is that Mary was family, my mother's second cousin, which makes this child my blood kin. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Tom felt Lily press closer to his side. I've filed a petition with Judge Morrison for legal guardianship. Vernon pulled papers from his coat. A child deserves stability, a proper home, not, his eyes found Tom, charity from a man who can't feed himself, let alone a growing girl. Tom's hands curled into fists. He felt every eye turn toward him. Now, I know Tom Garrett meant well pulling her from under that wagon. We're all grateful she survived. Vernon's smile was thin as January ice. But kindness isn't the same as capability. The man is bankrupt. He owes money he can't pay. His ranch is forfeit come March. Someone in the crowd, One of the merchants nodded. Others shifted, uncomfortable but not disagreeing. This girl needs family who can provide for her, educate her, give her the life her mother would have wanted. Vernon descended 2 steps, close enough now that Tom could smell his cologne. I'm her nearest living relative. The law recognizes blood, Mr. Garrett, not sentiment. Tom opened his mouth to speak, but Esther's hand gripped his arm tight. Vernon turned back to the crowd. The hearing is set for February 15th. I trust you'll all do the Christian thing and support what's right for this child. He nodded to the lawyer, who produced a paper and handed it to Sheriff Hayes. Hayes walked down the steps and stopped in front of Tom. Official summons, he said, not quite meeting Tom's eyes. Guardianship hearing. You'll need to appear if you want to contest. Tom took the paper. The wax seal was still warm. The crowd began to break up, some heading for their wagons, others clustering in small groups to talk. Tom saw Mary Patterson whisper something to her husband, saw the blacksmith shake his head and walk away. Lily tugged on Tom's coat. What does guardianship mean? Tom crouched down to her level. The church steps were cold under his knee. It means someone takes care of you, legal-like, makes decisions for you. I don't want him to make decisions for me. Her voice was small but steady. He scares me. I know. Tom glanced up at Esther, then back at Lily. We'll figure this out. But as he stood and watched Vernon climb into his buggy, the lawyer beside him, both men talking low and satisfied, Tom felt the trap close around him. 60 days to find $2,800, 31 days until the hearing, and a 7-year-old girl who trusted him to keep her safe. Judge Morrison's chambers smelled of old leather and pipe tobacco. Tom sat in a wooden chair that creaked every time he shifted. Vernon sat across the room, his lawyer beside him. Both men relaxed as if they were discussing the weather. The judge was 60 if he was a day, with gray mutton chops and eyes that had seen every kind of lie a man could tell. He read through Vernon's petition slowly, turning pages with deliberate care. Mr. Calhoun. The judge looked up. You claim blood kinship with the child. Second cousin, once removed, Your Honor. Vernon's lawyer produced a chart, names, dates, connecting lines drawn in careful ink. Mary Brennan's mother and Mr. Calhoun's mother were first cousins. The genealogy is clear. Tom leaned forward. I've never heard Lily mention any family. Her mother was dead when you found the child, Mr. Garrett. The lawyer's voice was smooth as oil. Hardly a reliable witness. Judge Morrison studied the chart. This appears in order. Your Honor, Tom started. Mr. Garrett, the judge's tone wasn't unkind. Do you have legal representation? No, sir. Can't afford it. Then I'd advise you to listen more than you speak. Morrison set the genealogy aside and picked up another document. Mr. Calhoun, I see you've also submitted a land deed. Explain its relevance. Vernon's lawyer stood. The deed pertains to property formerly owned by the Brennan family, 140 acres adjacent to Boundary Creek. The land passed to Mary Brennan upon her father's death in 1873. Upon her death, it becomes the property of her sole heir. Tom's blood went cold. The lawyer continued, which is to say, young Lily Dawson now owns valuable property that requires adult management until she reaches majority. The room tilted. Tom understood now, saw the whole picture like a map spreading out before him. Vernon didn't want the girl. He wanted her land. Your Honor, Tom said, his voice rough. This is about money, not family. This is about a child's welfare. Vernon's lawyer didn't even look at him. Mr. Garrett is insolvent. His ranch will be foreclosed within 60 days. He cannot provide. How convenient, Tom cut in, that you're the one holding the note on my ranch. Vernon spoke for the first time, his voice calm. Business and family are separate matters, Mr. Garrett, though I admit it concerns me that you try to confuse the two in front of his honor. Judge Morrison held up a hand. Gentlemen, the court will review all evidence and hear testimony on February 15th. Mr. Calhoun, your petition for temporary guardianship is denied. The child may remain in Mr. Garrett's care until the hearing. Vernon's jaw tightened, but his lawyer put a hand on his arm. However, the judge continued, looking at Tom now, if your financial situation deteriorates further, Mr. Garrett, if you become unable to provide food and shelter, guardianship will default to Mr. Calhoun as next of kin. Tom stood slowly. She stays with me. For now. Morrison closed the file. 31 days, Mr. Garrett. I suggest you make good use of them. Outside, the January sun was weak and pale. Tom stood on the courthouse steps and watched Vernon and his lawyer climb into their buggy. Vernon looked back once, smiled, and tipped his hat. Then he was gone, wheels crunching through frozen mud. Tom pulled the locket from his pocket. Lily's locket, the one she'd given him to keep safe. He opened it, studied the map again. The creek, the grove, the coordinates. Mary Brennan had hidden something worth killing for, and Tom had 31 days to figure out what. The walk to Boundary Creek took an hour on horseback. Tom rode slow, Lily sitting in front of him wrapped in blankets against the February cold. The sky was gray, threatening snow, and the wind carried the smell of coming weather. "Mama brought me here once," Lily said. Her breath clouded in the air. "I was little, maybe 5. You remember what she showed you?" "A tree. A big one with branches that went sideways." She pointed ahead. "There." The cottonwood grove appeared through the bare aspens. 6 ancient trees clustered near the creek bend, their trunks thick as barrel hoops. The creek was frozen at the edges, black water running fast in the middle. Tom heard it rushing over stones, the sound clean and cold. He dismounted and lifted Lily down. Her boots crunched in the snow. "Show me," he said. She walked straight to the largest cottonwood, her hand trailing along the bark. Then she stopped, knelt down, and began brushing snow away from the ground. "Mama said there was a rock, a big one, with marks on it." Lily's mittened hands worked steadily. "She said this was our place, that nobody could take it." Tom knelt beside her and helped clear the snow. His fingers went numb quick, but he kept digging. 6 inches down, his hand hit something solid. Stone, flat and wide, buried in frozen earth. Lily pulled off her mitten and touched the rock's surface. "Here, see?" Tom leaned closer. Someone had carved letters into the stone years ago, the grooves filled with moss and dirt. He brushed it clean with his palm. M.B. 1867, Mary Brennan. 16 years ago, when she would have been, a child herself. She said this marked where our land started. Lily pulled the locket from under her coat and opened it. The map lay across her palm, fragile and faded. "The creek bends here, see? And the trees are here. But when I look at the map, the creek goes a different way." Tom compared the drawing to the land in front of them. The map showed the creek bending east, forming a wide loop before straightening out, but the actual creek bent west, cutting a shorter path. "Creek changes course over time," Tom said. "Floods move it." "Mama's map is old." Lily traced the drawn line with one finger. "What if this shows where it used to be?" Tom stood, studying the grove, the frozen creek, the roll of land beyond. If the creek had been where the map showed, then the property line would be... His breath caught. 1/2 mile east, maybe more. If Lily's land followed the old creek boundary, she didn't own 140 acres. She owned twice that. And it included the flat stretch where the railroad wanted to run their spur line. Tom's hands shook as he folded the map and handed it back to her. "Put this away. Don't show it to anyone." "Why?" "Because your mama was right." He looked at the carved stone, the trees, the water. "This is yours, and now I know why Vernon wants it so bad." The wind picked up, rattling branches overhead. Lily suddenly ran to the edge of the grove, pointing. "Mr. Tom, why is there a pile of rocks in the creek?" Tom followed her gaze. 50 yards upstream, someone had built a rough dam, stones and timber stacked high enough to divert the flow. The water backed up behind it, spilling over into the lowland, his cattle's water source. "When did that get there?" he asked. "I don't know. It wasn't there when you brought me last week." Tom's jaw clenched. Vernon was cutting his water, slow enough that it wouldn't be obvious, but steady enough to hurt. 30 days until the hearing. And his cattle were already starting to suffer. Jake Rothman's duplicate ledger lay open on Tom's kitchen table. The banker traced entries with his finger, his face grim in the lamplight. "I found the original loan documents in Helena," Jake said. "Vernon forged the addendum, the clause about calling the full amount. Your signature is real, but the paragraph below it uses different ink." Tom poured coffee, his hands steadier than he felt. "Can you prove it?" "In court? Maybe. But it'll take months to get the documents authenticated, and you don't have months." Jake closed the ledger carefully. "There's something else. I asked around about Vernon's finances. He's leveraged to his neck, borrowed heavy to buy up land for this railroad deal. If it falls through, he's ruined. So he's desperate. Desperate men take risks." Jake accepted the coffee mug, wrapped both hands around it for warmth. I heard he hired men to work on something up at Boundary Creek. My cousin Samuel, you know him, Crow Elder, he mentioned seeing activity there last week. Tom thought of the dam. I saw it today. He's cutting my water. Jake's eyes narrowed. That's illegal on treaty land. Boundary Creek falls under the 1855 agreement. Water rights are protected. Vernon doesn't care about treaties. No, but the Crow do. Jake set down his mug. Samuel came by the bank yesterday, asked about the Dawson girl, said he heard she might have claim to land near the creek. I told him I couldn't discuss client's business, but he seemed interested. Tom looked at Lily's locket, sitting on the table between them. The map was folded inside, the secret it held worth more than Vernon's entire fortune. Jake. Tom kept his voice low, though Lily was asleep in the other room. What if the land she owns isn't where everyone thinks it is? What do you mean? Tom opened the locket and spread the map on the table. Mary Brennan drew this before she left. The creek's in a different place than it is now. If the property line followed the old creek bed. Jake studied the map, his face going pale. Sweet God, the railroad spur. Goes right through it. Vernon would need her land to make the deal. Without it, the railroad goes around and his investment is worthless. Jake looked up. Tom, this is a $50,000 problem for him. 50,000. The number hung in the air like smoke. He'll do anything to get it, Tom said. Anything legal, yes, but if we can prove the creek boundary is different, if we can show the original survey. Jake stopped. We'd need the survey markers, the iron stakes they used to mark corners in the 1850s. They'd be buried. Deep, in the ground's frozen solid. Tom thought of the carved stone, Mary Brennan's initials worn by weather and time. Somewhere near that grove, an iron stake marked the real property line, buried under 3 feet of frozen earth and 15 years of silence. Outside, he heard ice crack in the eaves as the temperature dropped. The sound was sharp as a rifle shot. We've got 30 days, Tom said. Think that's enough time for the ground to thaw? Jake looked out the window at the February darkness. We'd need a miracle, or a very early spring. The Silver Bend saloon smelled of whiskey, sawdust, and old tobacco smoke. Tom pushed through the door just after sundown, his boots tracking mud from the street. The room went quiet. 20 men turned to look, then turned away just as fast. Vernon Calhoun stood at the bar, surrounded by merchants. His voice carried clear across the room. Convenient, isn't it? Vernon swirled whiskey in his glass. Bankrupt man finds an orphan girl who just happens to own land. Now he won't let her go. Tom stopped 3 feet from the bar. His hands hung loose at his sides. Say what you mean, Vernon. The room held its breath. Sheriff Hayes looked up from his card game, cards frozen in his hand. Vernon turned, his smile cold. I'm saying it looks peculiar. Man in your position suddenly playing guardian to a child with property. He took a sip. Some might wonder if you're after her land, planning to marry her off to your son when she comes of age, maybe. Oh, wait. Vernon's smile sharpened. You don't have a son, do you? Wife and baby both died. My condolences. Tom's vision narrowed. His right hand curled into a fist so tight his knuckles cracked. The merchants shifted, uncomfortable but watching. Vernon's clerk stood by the window, face pale. Careful, Vernon. Tom's voice was quiet, deadly. There's things a man doesn't say. I'm just speaking what others are thinking. Vernon set down his glass. You're using that child, whether you admit it or not. Tom took one step forward. Vernon's hand moved toward his coat pocket, where Tom knew he kept a derringer. Tom, Esther Whitfield's voice cut through the tension. She stood in the doorway, flour still dusting her apron. Lily's asking for you, said she needs help with something at the ranch. Tom didn't move. His eyes locked on Vernon's face, seeing the calculation there, the way the man wanted him to swing first, wanted witnesses to see Tom Garrett lose control. Tom, Esther said again, firmer now. Tom's fist uncurled slowly. He stepped back, turned, and walked toward the door. Every eye in the room tracked him. Vernon's voice followed him out. 30 days, Garrett. Then that girl gets a proper home. Outside, the February air bit at Tom's face. His hands shook, not from cold, but from the effort of walking away. Esther stood beside him, arms crossed. Don't give him what he wants. He called me. I know what he called you. And every man in there knows he's lying. She gripped his arm. But if you'd hit him, he'd have you arrested. Sheriff's just looking for an excuse. Tom leaned against the hitching post, breathing hard. Through the saloon window, he could see Vernon laughing with the merchants, buying rounds, playing the generous victor. One of Vernon's men stopped by the boarding house today, Esther said quietly. Young fellow, looked nervous, said his cousin works Vernon's dam crew up at Boundary Creek. Tom looked at her. And? Said they used cheap mortar, less than half what they should have. Vernon told them to cut costs. Esther's voice dropped lower. Said the dam won't hold past the first good rain, maybe not even that long. Tom thought of the crude pile of stone and timber, the water backing up behind it. If it broke during spring runoff. How long till your ranch is flooded? Esther asked. Depends on the break. Could be nothing, could be everything. Vernon's counting on everything. She pulled her shawl tighter. He's not just choking your water, Tom. He's building a disaster. When that dam breaks and ruins your land, who do you think the judge will give that girl to? Tom's gut turned cold. Vernon wasn't just trying to bankrupt him, he was trying to make him unfit. A laborer stepped out of the saloon behind them, the same man who'd whispered about the dam crew days ago. He glanced around, then moved close. Mr. Garrett? His voice was barely audible. My cousin quit yesterday, said he couldn't be part of it no more. Told me Vernon's planning something for when the thaw comes. What kind of something? Don't know exactly, but he's been buying blasting powder. Said it's for clearing stumps on his property, but... The man shook his head. Just thought you should know. He disappeared into the darkness before Tom could respond. Esther's face was grim. He's going to blow that dam himself, make it look like an accident. And blame it on spring runoff. Tom straightened. Nobody'd question it. Except someone who knew about the cheap mortar, someone who saw him buy the powder. Esther looked at him hard. You need help, Tom, real help, the kind that carries weight in this territory. I've got Jake. You need more than a banker with duplicate ledgers. She paused. You need Samuel 2 horses. Tom frowned. The Crow Elder? He knows those creek boundaries better than any surveyor. Treaty land is his concern. And Vernon damming that water without permission? Esther's smile was sharp. That's a treaty violation. Gives the Crow legal standing. Through the saloon window, Tom watched Vernon shake hands with another merchant, sealing whatever deal they'd made. 30 days until the hearing, in a dam that might not last 30 hours. Samuel 2 horses lived in a cabin 2 miles from town, where the reservation land met the valley. Tom rode there at dawn, Lily bundled in blankets in front of him. The sky was pearl gray, and the air smelled of coming snow. Samuel was outside when they arrived, feeding chickens from a leather bag. He was older than Tom, gray braids, face lined as riverbed stone, hands steady and sure. He looked up at the sound of hooves and nodded once. Tom Garrett, heard you might come. Tom dismounted and helped Lily down. Jake Rothman said you asked about the Dawson girl. I did. Samuel scattered the last of the feed and hung the bag on a fence post. Come inside, cold out here for a child. The cabin was small but warm, a fire crackling in the stone hearth. The walls were lined with maps, old ones hand-drawn showing boundaries that predated the territory itself. Samuel poured coffee from a battered pot and gestured for them to sit. Lily stared at the maps, fascinated. Your mother was Mary Brennan, Samuel said to her, not a question. Yes, sir. I knew her father. Good man. Treated the people fair when most didn't. Samuel's eyes were kind. He marked his land proper before the railroad came and moved all the lines. Tom pulled the locket from his pocket. She left this for Lily. There's a map inside. Samuel took it carefully, opened it, and studied the drawing for a long moment. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened. This shows the old creek boundary, before 1872. He traced the line with one weathered finger. The railroad company resurveyed that year, moved the creek path on paper to make their land grants work, but the treaty the people signed was based on the original survey. From 1851, Tom said. Earlier, 1849. Samuel walked to the wall and pulled down a yellowed map, unrolled it on the table. See here? Boundary Creek was drawn different. Protected under treaty law, nobody can dam it without tribal consent. Tom leaned over the map. The old creek line matched Lily's locket. Exactly. Vernon Calhoun built a dam, Tom said, up past the cottonwood grove. It's backing water onto my land. Samuel's jaw tightened. Without asking permission. Without telling anyone. That's a violation. Samuel rolled the map carefully. Treaty says any water diversion requires approval from the tribal council. Vernon knows this. He's counting on nobody noticing until it's too late. Can you stop him? I can bring it before the council. But that takes time. Weeks, maybe. Samuel looked at Lily, then back at Tom. Unless we can prove the original boundary, the iron stakes they used in 49, they're still there, buried. If we find one, we have physical proof the creek was different. Tom thought of the frozen ground, the carved stone marking Mary Brennan's claim. The ground's still frozen solid, he said. Samuel walked to the window and looked at the gray sky. Not for long. Feel that wind? That's Chinook coming. Warm wind from the west. Ground will start thawing tomorrow. Tom's heart kicked. How long till it's soft enough to dig? Week, maybe 2. Depends on how deep the frost goes. Samuel turned back. But if Vernon's dam is as poorly built as you say, the Chinook will test it, melt the ice upstream, send more water through. If it breaks before we find that stake... He didn't need to finish. Tom looked at Lily, who was tracing the old map with her finger, following the creek's path like it was a story only she could read. We find the stake, Tom said, before the dam breaks and before the hearing. Samuel nodded slowly. Then we start digging tomorrow, and we pray the ground thaws faster than Vernon's greed moves. Outside, the wind shifted. Warm air touched Tom's face, the first breath of spring in 3 months of winter. The Chinook had arrived. Tom sat alone at his kitchen table past midnight. The lamp flickered, casting shadows that moved like accusation across the walls. Jake's ledger lay open in front of him, proof of fraud, clear as scripture. Enough to destroy Vernon Calhoun in any honest court. His hands shook as he turned the pages. He could do it. Expose Vernon publicly, show the forged documents, the fraudulent loan, the damning violation. Ruin the man so completely he'd never recover. Vernon would lose everything, his business, his reputation, probably his freedom. And Tom would win. The thought tasted like ash. In the next room, Lily slept. He could hear her breathing, soft and steady, trusting him to keep her safe, trusting him to be better than the men who'd hurt her mother. Tom's wife Eleanor had said it once, years ago, her hand on his cheek after he'd come home furious about a land dispute. Destroying a man makes you smaller, Samuel. Justice without mercy is just revenge. He'd barely remembered that conversation until now. The lamp sputtered. Tom rubbed his eyes, exhaustion pulling at him like undertow. Vernon had called him a user, accused him of manipulating a child for land. The accusation was poison, but it had wormed its way in. Am I doing this for her or for me? He looked at the ledger again, the numbers blurred. If he used this evidence, Vernon would fight back with everything he had. Lawyers, delays, appeals. It could take years. And in those years, Lily would be caught in the middle. A piece on a board neither of them owned. What kind of man do I want to be? Tom closed the ledger slowly. His hands steadied. He could expose Vernon's fraud, but he could also offer the man a way out. A clean exit before the trial, before the evidence became public. Let Vernon leave Silver Bend with some dignity and tact instead of dragging him through the mud. Mercy instead of revenge. It went against every instinct. Vernon had tried to take his ranch, his reputation, the girl who'd become... what? A daughter? The word felt too big, too fragile to say aloud. But Eleanor's voice was clear in his memory. You can't build a home on another man's destruction. Tom heard a sound from Lily's room, a small whimper, the kind that came with nightmares. He stood, walked to her doorway. She was curled tight under the quilt, murmuring something he couldn't make out. He knelt beside the bed and touched her shoulder gently. It's all right, he said. You're safe. Her eyes opened, unfocused, frightened, then found his face. She relaxed. Mr. Tom? Right here. I dreamed the bad man took me away. Her voice was tiny. And you couldn't stop him. Tom's throat closed. He pulled the quilt higher around her shoulders. Nobody's taking you anywhere. Promise? He thought of the hearing in 23 days, the dam that might break, the stake they hadn't found yet, all the things that could still go wrong. I promise, he said. She closed her eyes again, trusting, and sleep took her back under. Tom stayed there on his knees, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of that promise settle on his shoulders like snow. He'd offer Vernon mercy, not because the man deserved it, but because Lily deserved a father who chose the harder path. The sound woke Tom an hour before dawn, A crack like thunder, but deeper, felt in the bones. He was out of bed and at the window before full consciousness came. The eastern sky was gray with coming morning. The Chinook had been blowing for 3 days, warm and steady, melting snow and softening the frozen ground. Tom had spent every daylight hour digging at the cottonwood grove with Samuel, searching for the iron stake that would prove Lily's claim. They hadn't found it yet. Another crack echoed across the valley, then a sound like distant rushing, water, moving fast, the dam. Tom pulled on his boots and coat, grabbed his hat. Lily appeared in her doorway, eyes wide. "Stay here," he said. "Don't go outside." "What's happening?" "I'll be back soon. Lock the door behind me." He was on his horse and riding hard before she could answer. The cottonwood grove was 2 miles away. Tom pushed his horse faster than was safe in the half-light, hooves pounding frozen earth that was starting to give. The rushing sound grew louder. He reached the grove as the sun broke the horizon. The dam was coming apart, not all at once. Vernon had built it too well for that. But the cheap mortar was failing, stones shifting, timbers cracking under the pressure of meltwater that had been building for days. Water poured through aisles, widening them, eating the structure from inside. Tom rode upstream, close enough to see clearly. 3 of Vernon's men stood near the dam, watching it fail. They weren't trying to repair it, they were just watching. One of them saw Tom and shouted. The others turned, then scattered, running for horses tied in the trees, mounting fast, riding away. All except one. A kid, maybe 16, stood frozen at the water's edge. He'd been too close when the timber shifted. Now a section of the dam was collapsing toward him, heavy logs rolling free. Tom didn't think. He spurred his horse into the water. The current was strong, pulling at the animal's legs. Tom leaned down, grabbed the kid's arm, and hauled him up behind the saddle. The horse stumbled, found footing, lunged toward shore. Behind them, the dam section gave way with a roar. Water surged through the gap, carrying timber and stone downstream like toys. Tom's horse made it to solid ground. The kid slid off, soaked and shaking, and fell to his knees in the mud. "Thank you," he gasped. "God, thank you," I thought. "You work for Vernon?" The kid nodded, breath heaving. "Why were you just watching it fail?" "He told us to. Said when it broke, we were to ride straight to town and tell everyone it was spring runoff. Natural disaster." The kid looked up at Tom, face pale. "But it wasn't. He made us use bad mortar, made us build it to fail." Tom looked downstream, where the flood was spreading across his lowland pasture. Not catastrophic, not yet, but enough to ruin grazing for months. Enough to make him look unfit before a judge. "What's your name?" Tom asked. Charlie Webb." "You going to testify to what you just told me?" The kid's eyes widened with fear. Vernon's going to answer for this." Tom held out his hand. "But I need witnesses who'll tell the truth." Charlie stared at the offered hand. His whole body shook, cold and fear mixed together. Then he reached up and gripped Tom's palm. "I'll testify," he said. Behind them, the dam gave one final groan and collapsed completely. Water roared through the gap, carrying away the last of Vernon's careful plan. And as Tom helped his kid to his feet, he heard something else. Esther's voice, calling from upstream. "Tom, Samuel found it. He found the stake." The hearing was held at Boundary Creek under open sky. Judge Morrison had agreed to Samuel's request. Unusual but not without precedent when treaty land was involved. 50 people gathered in the cottonwood grove, standing in mud, left by 3 days of Chinook winds. The ground steamed in the morning sun, winter finally breaking. Tom stood with Lily beside him, her hand tucked in his. Jake Rothman held the ledgers against his chest. Esther stood with a line of 12 women from town, silent witnesses in dark dresses. Samuel's 2 horses waited near the largest cottonwood, his face carved from patience. Vernon arrived last, stepping from his buggy with his lawyer. His boots sank into the soft earth. He looked at the crowd, the creek, the trees, and something flickered across his face. Not fear, not yet, but recognition that the game had shifted. Judge Morrison sat on a camp chair someone had brought, his gavel resting on a makeshift table. The creek rushed loud behind him, swollen with meltwater. "We're here," the judge began, "to determine guardianship of Lily Mae Dawson and to address allegations of water rights violations on treaty land." He looked at Vernon. "Mr. Calhoun, you've petitioned for guardianship based on kinship and Mr. Garrett's alleged unfitness. Present your case." Vernon's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, the facts are simple. Mr. Calhoun is blood family, second cousin to the child's late mother. He has means, stability, and a proper home. Mr. Garrett is bankrupt, alone, and as of 3 days ago, his ranch suffered flooding that destroyed grazing land. He cannot provide The flooding, Samuel Two Horses interrupted, his voice carrying clear, was caused by an illegal dam built without tribal consent. The lawyer turned. The dam was on private property. The creek is treaty land. Samuel walked forward, weathered hands steady. The 1849 agreement protects water rights. Any diversion requires approval from the tribal council. Mr. Calhoun never asked. Vernon's jaw tightened. That dam was built to manage runoff, with cheap mortar that failed in 3 days. Tom spoke for the first time. Your own man told me you ordered it built to collapse. Charlie Webb stepped forward from the crowd, his young face pale but determined. It's true, Your Honor. Mr. Calhoun told us to use half the mortar we needed, said it should fail natural-like when the thaw came. Vernon's lawyer opened his mouth, then closed it. Vernon's face darkened. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Mr. Calhoun, did you build a dam on Boundary Creek? For land management purposes. Without tribal approval? Silence. Vernon looked at his lawyer, who shook his head minutely. The dam question is separate from guardianship, the lawyer tried. It speaks to character, Jake Rothman said. He stepped forward, opening his ledger. As does fraud. Your Honor, Mr. Calhoun purchased Mr. Garrett's loan note for $1,200 and is attempting to collect $2,800. The additional amount comes from a forged addendum, different ink added after purchase. I have photographic evidence from the Helena Bank. Jake laid the photographs on the judge's table. Morrison studied them, his expression hardening. Vernon's face went white. Those are proof, Jake said simply. The crowd murmured. The women behind Esther stood straighter, a wall of silent judgment. The laborers who'd come to watch crossed their arms. Even the merchants who'd sided with Vernon shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, Tom said, there's one more thing. The land Mr. Calhoun claims my ward owns, it's not where he thinks it is. Vernon's head snapped toward him. What? Samuel walked to the largest cottonwood and knelt. His hands brushed away mud and dead leaves, revealing the flat stone Tom and Lily had found weeks ago. MB, 1867. Mary Brennan marked this boundary when she was a child, Samuel said. Her father taught her the old survey lines before the railroad changed them and the iron stake that marks the true corner. He moved 3 feet to the right and drove his hand into the soft earth. Is here. He pulled up a length of rusted iron, 2 feet long, mud clinging to its surface. Stamped into the metal were numbers and letters, worn but readable. U.S. Survey, 1849. Section 12. The crowd went silent. Samuel laid the stake on the judge's table beside the photographs. This is the original boundary marker. The creek ran east of here in 1849. The land Miss Dawson inherited follows that line, not the railroad survey from 72. Judge Morrison picked up the stake, turned it over in his hands. You're saying the property is larger than recorded? And in a different location, Samuel said. The railroad spur Mr. Calhoun wants to build. It crosses land he doesn't have rights to. Vernon's lawyer moved fast, shuffling papers. Your Honor, the current land office records are based on a survey that superseded treaty boundaries, Samuel cut in. The tribe's claim predates territorial law. This stake proves it. Tom watched Vernon's face crumble. The man had built everything on a lie. A redrawn map, a fraudulent loan, a guardianship petition designed to control land he thought he could steal, and now every piece was falling apart. Judge Morrison stood, the iron stake still in his hand. He looked at Vernon for a long moment. Mr. Calhoun, I'm denying your petition for guardianship. Furthermore, I'm referring evidence of fraud and treaty violations to the territorial prosecutor. He set the stake down with a heavy thunk. You're fortunate Mr. Garrett hasn't pressed criminal charges. Yet. Vernon's lawyer touched his arm, but Vernon shook him off. His face was gray, sweat beading despite the cool air. This is... Vernon started. You can't... I can, and I have. Morrison turned to Tom. Mr. Garrett, the court recognizes your petition for legal guardianship of Lily Mae Dawson. Given the evidence of your character and the child's clear attachment to you, I'm granting permanent custody pending formal adoption proceedings. Tom's knees went weak. Lily's hand tightened in his. Your Honor, Vernon's voice was desperate now. I have $50,000 invested in this land deal. The railroad will have to find another route. Morrison gathered his papers. This hearing is concluded. Vernon stood frozen, his world collapsing in real time. The merchants who'd supported him edged away. The laborers watched with satisfaction. Even his own lawyer was packing his briefcase, ready to leave. Tom released Lily's hand and walked toward Vernon. The crowd tensed. Vernon's hand moved toward his coat, the derringer he always carried. Sheriff Hayes stepped forward, hand on his gun, but Tom raised his palm. "Don't," Tom said quietly. "It's over." Vernon's hand stopped. His eyes met Tom's, and for a moment there was something raw there. Not just defeat, but the terror of a man who'd gambled everything and lost. "You could have destroyed me," Vernon said. His voice was barely audible. "The fraud evidence, the dam, you could have had me jailed." "I could have," Tom agreed. "Why didn't you?" Tom thought of Eleanor's words, of Lily sleeping safe in his house, of the choice he'd made at midnight to be better than his anger. "Because mercy isn't weakness," he said. "It's proof. I'm not you." Vernon flinched like he'd been struck. "Your note on my ranch is void," Tom continued. "Jake's evidence makes the whole contract fraudulent. You'll sign a quitclaim today, walk away from Silver Bend, and don't come back. I have nothing left. You have your freedom. That's more than you deserve." Tom lowered his voice further. "Jake found your ledgers, Vernon, all of them, including the payments to your son in St. Louis. You walk away quiet, and those stay private. You fight this, and everyone knows what you've been hiding." Vernon's face drained of what little color remained. His secret, the illegitimate child, the double life, laid bare. 24 hours, Tom said. Then Jake files everything with the prosecutor. He turned and walked back to Lily. Samuel handed him the iron stake, its weight solid and real. Esther smiled, tears on her cheeks. Jake nodded once, approval in his eyes. Behind him, Tom heard Vernon's lawyer murmuring urgently, heard Vernon's footsteps in the mud, moving toward his buggy, heard the creak of leather and wood as the man climbed up, alone. The buggy rolled away through the cottonwoods. Ew. Tom didn't watch it go. Lily tugged on his coat. "Is it over?" Tom knelt down to her level, the iron stake between them, proof of her inheritance, proof that the truth could be buried, but never destroyed. "It's over," he said. She wrapped her arms around his neck, and Tom held her close, feeling the sun warm on his shoulders, hearing the creek rush clean and free behind them. Spring had finally come. Vernon Calhoun signed the quitclaim in Jake Rothman's office at sunset. His hand shook as he wrote his name, the pen scratching loud in the silent room. Sheriff Hayes witnessed, his face carefully neutral. When it was done, Vernon set down the pen and looked at Tom. The man had aged 10 years in a day, gray skin, hollow eyes, shoulders bent under the weight of his collapse. "The others," Vernon said. "The ranchers I cheated. You're going after them too?" Tom stood by the window watching the last light fade from the street. "Jake's got the ledgers. He'll reach out to every man you took advantage of. They'll get their land back, or compensation. Your choice is whether you help make it right or whether the prosecutor does it for you." Vernon's lawyer, the expensive one from Helena, had already left on the afternoon stage. Smart man, getting clear of the wreckage. "I needed that railroad deal," Vernon said. Not an excuse, just a fact spoken to the air. "I was drowning, thought if I could just—" "You thought stealing from desperate men would save you." Jake closed the ledger with a soft thump. "It never does." Vernon stood slowly. His coat was rumpled, his collar askew. The careful facade of respectability had crumbled, leaving just a tired man who'd bet everything on cruelty and lost. "Where will you go?" Sheriff Hayes asked. "California, maybe. Somewhere no one knows my name." Vernon picked up his hat, turned it in his hands. "For what it's worth, Garrett, the girl. You'll do right by her." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. Tom nodded once. Vernon walked to the door, paused with his hand on the frame. "I used to be better than this," he said quietly. "Long time ago, before the debts, before the pressure, I used to be better." Then he was gone, footsteps fading down the stairs. Jake moved to the window and watched Vernon's figure cross the street toward the boarding house, where he'd collect his bags before catching tomorrow's stage. "You think he meant that?" Jake asked. "About being better once?" "Probably." Tom joined him at the window. "Most men start out decent. It's the choosing that breaks them, choosing money over people, power over mercy. Do it enough times, and you forget there was ever another way." "You didn't forget." Tom thought of the midnight hours, the ledger open, The temptation to destroy Vernon completely. How close he'd come. I almost did, he said. Jake smiled slightly. Almost doesn't count. Below, Vernon disappeared into the boarding house. A lamp lit in one of the upstairs windows, the man packing his life into bags, preparing to vanish. The other ranchers, Tom said. How many? 6 that I found. Could be more. Jake tapped the ledger. Morrison Ranch, Hendricks Place, the old Brennan homestead before it passed to Mary. Vernon had a system, buy notes cheap, add fraudulent terms, foreclose in winter when nobody could fight back. We'll fix it, however long it takes. Jake nodded. I'll start tomorrow. Most of them will be surprised to hear they have legal recourse. He paused. What Vernon said about drowning, I almost felt sorry for him. You can feel sorry and still hold a man accountable. Tom turned from the window. Mercy doesn't mean pretending harm didn't happen. It just means you don't become what hurt you. Outside, full dark had fallen. The street was quiet except for piano music drifting from the saloon, something slow and mournful that matched the mood. Tom shook Jake's hand. Thank you. For the ledgers, the investigation? All of it. Thank Esther, she's the one who told me to look. Jake smiled. Besides, I know what it's like to have paper used as a weapon. Felt good to use it for justice instead. Tom left the office and walked into the spring night. The air was soft, carrying the smell of wet earth and new growth. 3 months ago he'd been alone, broken, counting down to ruin. Now he had a daughter waiting at home. He untied his horse and rode slowly through town, past the bank where Vernon's empire had crumbled, past the saloon where men would gossip for months about what happened at Boundary Creek, past Esther's boarding house where a light burned warm in the kitchen. Tomorrow, there would be work to do, fences to mend, land to restore, adoption papers to file. Tonight, there was just the ride home under stars, and a little girl who called him Mr. Tom, but might, someday, call him something more. 1 week later, Tom and Lily stood in the cottonwood grove at dawn. The air smelled of apple blossoms, not from any tree here, but from the sapling Samuel had helped them carry from town. The iron survey stake stood upright where Samuel had found it, cleaned now, gleaming in the early light. Judge Morrison had ordered it marked as a protected historical boundary. The tribal council had blessed it, and Lily had inherited not just land, but a piece of history that couldn't be erased. Tom dug a hole 3 feet from the stake, his shovel biting into earth that had finally thawed all the way through. Lily knelt beside him, the apple sapling cradled in her arms like something precious. Mama loved apples, she said. She used to tell me about the trees they had back east before they came west, said someday we'd have our own. Tom set down the shovel and helped her lower the sapling into the hole. The roots spread out in the dark soil, finding purchase. Together they filled the hole, packing earth gently around the base. When it was done, Lily sat back on her heels and looked at it, small, fragile, but alive. How long till it makes apples? She asked. 3 years, maybe 4. You'll be 11 by then. Tom wiped dirt from his hands. Old enough to climb it. She smiled at that. Then her face grew serious. Mr. Tom, the judge said you could adopt me. Does that mean? It means you're mine and I'm yours, legal and proper. He cleared his throat, uncertain how to say what he felt. If that's what you want. What do I call you? The question hung in the morning air. Tom thought of his wife, his lost daughter, the years of silence in an empty house. Thought of Lily asking why no one helped him, of her hand in his at the hearing, of the way she trusted him with her locket and her nightmares and her future. Whatever feels right, he said. Lily considered this. Then she stood, brushed dirt from her dress, and took his hand. Papa, she said, testing the word. Is that all right? Tom's vision blurred. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Papa, she said again, certain this time. They stood together in the grove, while the sun climbed higher, warming the ground, coaxing green shoots from mud that had been frozen solid just weeks ago. The creek sang over stones, birds called from the cottonwoods, and the apple sapling stood straight, its branches reaching toward light. Samuel's 2 horses emerged from the trees carrying a small leather pouch. He'd promised to come at sunrise for a blessing ceremony, tobacco offerings for the land, prayers for the girl who'd inherited it. Esther followed, and Jake, and a dozen other townsfolk who'd stood witness at the hearing. They gathered in a circle around the stake in the tree, quiet, respectful. Samuel opened the pouch and sprinkled tobacco at the base of the survey stake, speaking in Crow, words Tom didn't understand but felt in his bones. Then Samuel switched to English. This land remembers, he said. Remembers Mary Brennan planting that stone. Remembers the old creek and the iron stake buried by men who thought truth could be hidden. Remembers a child trapped under a wagon and a man who pulled her free. He turned to Tom and Lily. And now it will remember this tree, planted where lies were defeated by mercy, where a father chose his daughter and a daughter chose home. Esther wiped her eyes. Jake smiled. The others bowed their heads. Samuel placed his hand on the sapling's thin trunk. May this tree grow strong, may its roots go deep, and may the fruit it bears feed generations who remember that justice is nothing without compassion and family is nothing without choice. Amen, Esther whispered. The word echoed through the circle. Amen. Amen. Lily stepped forward and placed both her hands on the tree, as if blessing it in return. Then she looked up at Tom, at Papa, and smiled. Spring had come, and with it, a family that chose itself. 40 years is a long time. Long enough for a sapling to grow thick as a man's waist, long enough for a 7-year-old girl to become a woman with children of her own, long enough for the truth to settle into the bones of a place. I'm an old man now, hands gnarled with arthritis, back bent from 5 decades of ranch work. But every April, I walk out to that cottonwood grove and check on the apple tree Lily and I planted. It's magnificent. Blossoms cover every branch, white as fresh snow, smelling sweet enough to make you believe in second chances. Lily's 47 now, 3 kids of her own, all grown. She works that land her mama left her, raises the best apples in Montana. People drive from 3 counties over to buy them. She married a good man, a school teacher, who treats her gentle and makes her laugh. They built their house right near Boundary Creek, where the water runs clean over the stones Samuel 2 horses blessed. We still visit the grove together every spring, pour a little water on that iron survey stake, thank the Lord for floods that reveal truth and for ground that thaws, just when you need it most. Jake Rothman helped 6 other ranchers get their land back from Vernon's schemes. Turned out mercy made room for more justice than revenge ever could have. Esther lived to see her 82nd birthday, died peaceful in her sleep with half the town at her bedside. Samuel passed 3 winters ago. We buried him with honors on the reservation, and his grandson now tends the treaty boundaries with the same careful wisdom. As for Vernon Calhoun, heard he died in California, alone and forgotten. Can't say I took pleasure in it. Just felt sad for a man who forgot that the things worth having can't be stolen. Every time I bite into one of Lily's apples, I taste that first thaw, smell that creek mud, feel that iron stake cold in my hand. Reckon that's what family is. Not blood, but who you'd pull from a flood, who you'd plant a tree for. Lily calls me Papa still. Even now, even with gray in her hair and grandchildren climbing in her lap. And every spring when those apple blossoms open, I remember the day a child's hand went limp under a broken wagon and I chose to pull her free. Best choice I ever made. By God's mercy, we got to see spring.